everyone, just give us a minute while we let everyone in.
Mine was 100%.
Just give us a minute. Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome to Lanarkshire Family History Society's webinar for February. My name is Claire Wilson and I will be your host this evening. My co-host tonight is Christine Woodcock. Christine, how are you?
I'm good, very good.
Yeah, how's the weather in Canada tonight?
Pouring rain.
No snow, no snow forecast?
No snow, at least we're not shoveling it, yeah.
That's funny. We would be obliged if you would turn your cameras and your sound off until the presentation is over. It just helps with keeping the background noise to a minimum so that you can hear the presentation, and it also makes sure that there's no delays and there's no screens freezing either. Please pop a note into the chat box and tell us where you're watching from today. The chat box is at the bottom of the screen if you hover your mouse down as well. We're in the middle of winter, which makes it an amazing time to bury your head in some research. The Society's office in Motherwell is currently open for visitors, so why not arrange a visit soon to see what you can uncover. And they also have a second-hand book sale coming up, which is next Wednesday the 15th, and it's from noon until 7 p.m. at night. So head over to the office if you're looking to bag yourself a bargain. The Allied Air Force Research webinar series is now underway and it's free for everyone to join online. You can find out more about the presentations via the website, and I will place details into the chat box of where you can find out more as well. Right, I'm out of breath now. I'll just introduce our speaker next. So our speaker this evening is George Barnsley of the Lanarkshire Police Historical Society. Tonight, George will tell us more about the background of Lanarkshire Police Historical Society. We'll share details relating to the murders of Constable George Taylor and Detective Sergeant Ross Hunt, the campaign for posthumous bravery awards, as well as telling us more about his recently launched Lanarkshire Police Chronicles book. You can place any questions for George into the chat box, or if you have any questions, you can ask them after the presentation. George, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire.
We'll hand over to you and let you find
All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'll just share the screen here for the presentation. Just hopefully everyone can see it.
That's fine. I'll tell you when we can see.
That's
perfect.
it.
That's that. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, as Claire said, I'm the chair of the Lanarkshire Police Historical Society, based in Lanarkshire in Scotland. What you see on the screen just now are some of the historical badges from the police forces in Scotland. From top left, going round clockwise is Airdrie Borough Police, Hamilton Borough Police, and the big double-headed eagle is Lanarkshire Constabulary, then Coatbridge Borough Police. The one in the centre is a national cap badge, similar to what was worn by the police now. And these are the badges that were worn by the various police forces in Lanarkshire that I'll speak about as we go through. That's good, the screen's frozen already. Oh, there we are. Right, so who am I? I'm a former police officer, served with Strathclyde Police for 32 years, retiring in 2010. 18 years of my police experience, the first 18 were in Lanarkshire, in uniform and in the CID, and in total 20 years in the Criminal Investigation Department within Strathclyde Police. At one point I was head of the Serious Crime Squad, which was dealing with all the major crime within the force area and beyond, to help some of the smaller police forces that surrounded us. So I was dealing with terrorism, murders, robberies, kidnap, hostage cases, you name it, anything that fell into the serious crime bracket, then we dealt with it. I'm now chair of Lanarkshire Police Historical Society, which I'll explain about in a little while, but I'm also got my own business. Barnsley and Barnsley training consultants, and we deliver investigation training to local authorities. So I use my past work experience and investigation experience to hopefully share that with others who are involved in similar type investigations within local authorities and government agencies. I've been doing that since I retired, but also been out to United Arab Emirates and Qatar delivering training to the police there. Also been assisting 3 television kind of police dramas over the years, and also now, as Claire alluded to, a published author, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. But how did the Lanarkshire Police Historical Society come into being? Well, it was in 2013, at the end of March, which was quite a significant date. That was when all the 8 police forces in Scotland merged into one. I think someone chose the date on purpose. It was actually the 1st of April that the new Police Scotland came into being, April Fool's Day. And some people have got opinions on that and the way it's developed since then. But the 8 regional forces in Scotland disappeared and all became one, which was obviously Police Scotland. What happened at that point was the local Lanarkshire division asked if the retired police officers could provide some form of the history of policing in the area up to that point. Now, there wasn't anything there. There wasn't a historical society at this point, just the Retired Police Officers Association, of which I am a member. But I've been collecting all this sort of stuff for years, lots of memorabilia, badges, uniforms, and various other things. So climbed up in the loft, got everything down, and we put out quite a large display within the canteen area of Motherwell Police Office. Some of us get dressed up as well in uniforms and various other things. And we laid it out there. It was a particularly horrible day. And much at that time, it was heavy snow. Things had been, and we actually wondered whether it was going to go ahead because of the nature of the weather. But it did go ahead, and it was a very successful day. And according to the local officers there, they were keeping a tally on people coming through, and there was somewhere in the region of 4,000 people came through the doors between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. And I think at one point they were all in the area where we had a display because it was absolutely mobbed. And we had to also have eyes in the back of our head just to keep an eye on the memorabilia and material that was lying on the desks. But it was really successful, and we were getting a lot of good comments from people in attendance, members of the public serving retired police officers, which a group of us that were there, the 5 or 6 you see in the top right photograph, we thought to ourselves, well, is there something in this? Can we maybe create some form of historical society to celebrate the history of policing in the area? Sat down, discussed it, pulled together a constitution, and we've developed our Lanarkshire Police Historical Society. So that's how it came into being, from this invite to an open day. We've now got 176 members. We've also got a private Facebook page, and that private Facebook page has almost 900 members on it. And we regularly publish stories, photographs, and various other things on that Facebook page for the interest of the members and the members of that page. But it is closed, so it's only by invite you can gain access to it, but it seems to be quite popular, getting really good feedback on it, so quite pleased with the way things have developed. So what was it we were trying to do, what we were trying to achieve? It was to promote and preserve the history of policing in Lanarkshire, to include all the various police forces that had been in existence in Lanarkshire over the last couple of 100 years, of which there have been quite a few. Airdrie Borough Police from 1835 to 1967. Airdrie's a town where I stay, where Claire also comes from. It's quite a reasonable sized town. I think it now has a population of around 50,000 or so. So it's quite a size, but in those days, way back in 1835 when it was formed, there was only 2 or 3 officers in it, and that increased to, I think it was about 75 officers by the time the force merged into Lanarkshire in 1967. Also had the Airdrie Rural Police from 1846 to 1857, who covered the rural areas surrounding the Airdrie district, and they were formed basically by landowners and by owners of businesses to protect the land, protect the various businesses and things in the more extreme areas of the county. Also, Coatbridge Borough Police, who were in existence from 1886 to 1967. Lanarkshire Borough Police, 1930 to 1967. Hamilton Borough Police, 1855 to 67. Lanarkshire Constabulary, 1857 to 1975. And Strathclyde Police, which had 3 divisions, NP and Q, which all covered Lanarkshire from 75 to the incorporation of Police Scotland in 2013. And now we have Police Scotland, Lanarkshire Division, which has been in place since 2013. Now, the smaller forces you see there, Airdrie, Coatbridge, Lanarkshire, Hamilton Borough, were particularly small, and I think the biggest of the forces had something like 110 police officers in it. And it was decided these weren't sustainable through various budgets and financial constraints, etc. It was decided in 1967 to merge the smaller borough police into Lanarkshire Constabulary, the larger Lanarkshire County Constabulary. So they then took over all these smaller towns. So they were policed by Lanarkshire Constabulary from 1967 to 1975, when regionalisation took place in Scotland, and 8 regions were created throughout the country, and the regions then replicated police forces. So there was 8 police forces in each of these regions. They existed until 2013, when they were all merged into one to become Police Scotland. And basically what happened there with Lanarkshire was we reversed back to 1975, and the Lanarkshire Division now covers what was Lanarkshire Constabulary in 1975, when Strathclyde Police was created. So what that really tells us is there isn't much changes as we move through history. A lot of things are recreating what's been before, kind of reinventing the wheel and going back to basics. And in policing, you know, that's what happens. You find it's peaks and troughs. Things will come into flavour and out of flavour and then reappear at various other times. So a lot of similarities as you move through the police service and through time, basically. What we do is we try and attend as many open days as we can. Obviously, the last 2 or 3 years have been a bit difficult in that regard, but we're now starting to get back into the swing of open days. And in fact, we've been to the Lanarkshire Family History Society events over, I think, about 3 or 4 years. We attended those with displays until COVID struck. Hopefully, these will get back into being, and we can come along again with our various displays and memorabilia and various other things. We also have some vintage police vehicles. You see one there, a Vauxhall Viva. We have access to many more. I think we've got access to about a dozen vintage police vehicles going back to about 1935 through to the late 1990s. So quite a wide variety of those as well can bring along to events. As you see there, the displays that we've got quite extensive displays, and that is only some of the items we have. We have 3 large rooms in Blantyre Police Office, where we store a lot of memorabilia and various other items that are donated to us, and they're all kept safely within the operational police office, which is quite good for us because it gives us a bit of security about the ownership of our items. And we have some of the period uniforms that we wear and put on sometimes at these events as well, just to let people see the changes in the way police are dressed, the equipment they use, and all these various other things. So I say we do presentations and talks similar to what we're doing here. We'll do presentations, or we can go out to schools, educational establishments, anywhere at all. And the police themselves have a lot of open days, so we'll come along to those, again with the memorabilia, but we'll also give presentations and talks at these as well to highlight how policing has changed over the centuries to where we are today, and showing some of the equipment and some of the materials that were used by police officers over the years. What we're also doing as a society is working closely with the current police force, Police Scotland, and we're collaborating with them and the Force Executive and the local divisional commander in Lanarkshire to ensure that anything of historical value is retained, is not thrown in the skip as police offices close, and that these are retained for historical value and preservation purposes, because we're going through quite a time at the moment in Scotland where the police force is quite cash strapped, so what they're doing is trying to save money, close down police offices. And the danger with that is, as someone goes in to clear the office, certain items will be placed into the bin, into skips, that should be getting kept for historical value. We have now been allowed into the police offices prior to them being stripped out and closed down to identify what should be getting kept and what obviously is of no value type thing. But that means we're now gathering quite a lot of material from these offices. And it's amazing what you find, some things dating back to the 1800s, still lurking in cupboards within these modern police offices. So people have had foresight over the years just to tuck things away and put them in lofts and in places where nobody really kind of goes very often, and we find them lying covered in dust. But a lot of them have great historical value with lots of really good information in them. We're also working with Police Scotland to create a Scottish Police Museum. Again, in 2013, when all of these forces merged into one, each of the 8 forces had their own pieces of memorabilia and historical items that were basically put into cupboards and into boxes and locked away. So since 2013, they've just been sitting, basically doing nothing. So what we're trying to do is get these items back out into the public arena, get them in display for people to see. But because there's not a great deal of money, the likelihood of getting an actual physical museum is highly unlikely in the foreseeable future. But what we're trying to do is create an online visible database and website where people can access these materials, either documents, equipment, whatever it may be, so that we can show what these are and explain them and give details about them. So that's ongoing at the moment. But unfortunately, it's a pretty slow process. The police don't move very quickly at all. We also engage with educational learning establishments to try and again promote the history of policing and try and merge that with the current policing regime, so work in tandem with the community officers within Police Scotland to try and show the changes in the way the streets are policed from historical days to now. And we try and gather as many artefacts and pieces of memorabilia as we can. And that's why these 3 rooms are absolutely full with items of historical policing value. So some of the things that we've managed to gather over the years are uniforms, equipment like handcuffs, batons, breathalyzers, all sorts of equipment we've managed to gather, and we've got them all preserved and put away. Paperwork, ephemera, forms, documents, books, you name it, we've got it, and we've got it safely locked away. Great for research purposes as well, a lot of the reports and documents that we've gathered. Photographs as well, absolutely fantastic. They really fascinate people when you see the changes in uniforms, the changes in equipment and styles of policing. The photographs that give that great visual impact in relation to how things have changed over the years. We also research and write stories in relation to the sorts of things people have dealt with in the police over the many centuries that we've been here, to try and emphasise again the changes in the way things are policed, or sometimes where there hasn't been any change, because sometimes you do some research, you actually find that what the police were doing 150 years ago, to a great extent, are still doing today. So some of the stories are really good to highlight that the policing sometimes hasn't changed that much. So telling stories about significant cases or significant individuals, really important as well to highlight that. And we've asked our members if they can possibly take the time just to write their own little biography, so we can get a store of their memories, their history of being involved in the police. And that's a really rich seam of information as well, finding out what they've done, their experiences over the years that they've been in the police and over the various decades we cover. Then we get a really good idea of how policing has developed over the years. So we also, as I mentioned, research significant cases, and it's frozen again. One of the main, or the biggest cases in Lanarkshire, in recent times anyway, was in the 1950s when Peter Manuel was involved in a number of murders, domestic murders, murdering people in their houses, people totally unconnected to him, and basically killed, I think it was 8 people he'd killed. He was sentenced to death in 1958, but that's something that people still talk about just now, and it has been covered quite extensively by various people over the years in various books and television programmes. In fact, one of the television programmes I assisted with was into the Peter Manuel case, and we gave some advice in relation to the period policing from that time to give them an idea of how things should be created on set. Also in 1921, the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, were involved in an incident in Bothwell where a police officer was shot whilst a number of them tried to raid a territorial army facility where they thought there was firearms, and the police officers just stumbled on them by chance. One being shot, fortunately wasn't killed, and the other was shot at, but his handcuffs and his belt saved him. The bullet that was meant for him ricocheted off his handcuffs and actually saved him from serious injury. Both police officers, I say, survived, and the people involved in it were arrested and jailed for significant periods. But round about that time, you find in Lanarkshire, certainly the central belt of Scotland, and most certainly the west of Scotland, a bit of a hotbed at that time in relation to this sort of incident in the IRA. Coming over from Ireland, a lot of Irish people came over at the time of the Troubles and the rising in Ireland and came over to Scotland, but still had close contacts back home. And you find there's a lot of fundraising, a lot of incidents taking place here in relation to the whole religious side of things. So there's quite a lot round about the early 1920s, mid 1920s. You find a lot of significant cases involving people linked to the IRA and the Troubles back in Ireland. And this one, Police Girl goes after a gunman. 1955, female police officer Isabella Rankin tackled a gunman in the streets of Rutherglen, bordering on Glasgow, where she chased a young guy that was in possession of a gun, who actually turned the gun on her and fired 2 or 3 times, unknown to her at the time. The gun actually had blank cartridges in it, but she didn't know that. She just saw the gun being pointed at her and fired, and she kept going, tackled him and arrested him, and for that she received the British Empire Medal for her bravery. So researching different people, different cases, brings a lot of information to the forefront, some of which people have never heard of. They've just disappeared over the mists of time. Some, is like Peter Manuel, is really well known. Most people, certainly in Scotland, will know about the Peter Manuel case. The other ones, maybe not so much, because they've lost something over time. People just, it falls away into the back of the distant memories. But they're all there, and once you do a bit of research and you find out the details of them, some of them are really, really intriguing cases, and obviously, as you see there from the headlines, serious cases. But again, they just disappear. And you'll find that in your own areas. Things will happen that some people will remember, but through the mists of time, it just disappears. But it's really interesting to actually research these things and find out a bit more about them. And in fact, the Isabella Rankin one, who she features in the book, but really only knew a little bit about that one until the book was published, and her niece got in touch with me just a few weeks ago, and she has provided me with a whole range of material in relation to Isabella, photographs, information about her police background, her police service. She joined actually during the Second World War and unfortunately died in 1968 at a relatively young age of 48 from cancer. But had an incredible career, because at that time there weren't many female police officers, and certainly not many that remained in the job for very long, because back then, up until 1967, if a female was in the police and she wanted to marry, then she had to resign. There was no ifs, buts, or maybes, no discussion about it. They had to leave the job. So it was unusual to get a female that served for the period that Isabella did, and she reached the rank of sergeant. But to also be involved in this sort of incident, again, was most unusual. In fact, she was the first female police officer in the UK to be awarded the British Empire Medal as well, which I find out just by speaking to her niece. So a lot of really good information out there. If you want to do the digging and find it, then it's there to be found and there to be researched and built upon. And that's Isabella getting her British Empire Medal from the Lord Lieutenant of Lanarkshire. We also look at other individual officers. So the first Chief Constable of Lanarkshire, way back in 1857, was George Mackay. He was in the force. He was in charge of the force for the first, it was 20 years of its existence. James Turner, King's Police Medal, that's what KPM means, King's Police Medal, who became the Chief Constable of Airdrie Borough Police. He started off as a minor, in the town of Airdrie, but I was involved in a serious accident in one of the pits where there was an explosion and he was temporarily blinded for about 3-4 months. Eventually get treatment in Glasgow, his sight came back, and sufficiently enough for him to join the police in 1909. Joined the police in 1909, and as you can see there from his medal ribbons, actually volunteered for the First World War and fought out in Egypt and in that area in the military. Returned and became Chief Constable in 1933, got the King's Police Medal, and he was Chief Constable for about 20 years in Airdrie. So from humble beginnings of a minor to rising to the level of Chief Constable. And again, you can appreciate at that time, education was not particularly brilliant, and yes, he could read and write, etc. He had basic learning skills, but he put himself back through quite a bit of education and got really good qualifications. So self-educated himself and got to the point, as I say, of being Chief Constable of the local borough police force. So quite an achievement. Inspector Joseph Anderson of Lanarkshire Constabulary, it's again quite an impressive array of medals there. He was in the army and fought in the Boer Wars at the end of the century, and then joined Lanarkshire Constabulary in 1902. But when the First World War came along, he volunteered again for military service and served in the Corps of Military Police through World War I from beginning to end. And that's how he's got the 3 medals there in the Boer War medals, eventually retiring in 1933 from Lanarkshire Constabulary. So again, incredible piece of service. And at the time he joined, and at the time of his police service, the police also ran the fire brigade. And for a while he was the chief fire officer for the county of Lanark as well. So he had a dual role of police officer and chief fire officer. Constable Oliver Graham, Motherwell Musher Borough Police, he fought in the First World War as well. He eventually retired from the police in 1955. He actually served initially in Edinburgh City Police, then left to join the Scots Guards in the First World War. And when he came back from the First World War, joined Lanarkshire Constabulary and then Motherwell Musher Borough Police. And again, quite a rich piece of history in his background, and we've researched him fully and got a lot of good information from relatives that we traced, and some of whom are now serving in the current police service. This chap here was Coatbridge Borough Police. Well, it was Lanarkshire Constabulary and Coatbridge Borough Police, David Young. Now look at the medals he's got. He fought in the Crimean War, Sebastopol, the Indian mutinies and all the rest of it, and eventually joined Lanarkshire Constabulary and then Coatbridge Borough Police. And he retired, I think he was actually about 72 when he retired, and that photograph was close to the point of his retirement. As you can see, he was a fair old age, but 72 years of age, still a police officer and still patrolling the beats is quite an achievement. And he'd been there and done it, he'd obviously been about and a fair bit of experience. Sorry about this, it keeps sticking for some reason. And Jean Lee or Patterson, Hamilton Borough Police. Jean joined Hamilton Borough Police in 1958 and eventually had to leave in 1966 because she was getting married to another police officer, Jack Patterson. That was the way things went, as I mentioned earlier. At that time, if they decided to marry a female police officer, decided to marry, then they had to resign, and that's what Jean done. Terrible thing about that was a lot of the policewomen at the time, when they did leave to marry, they bought back the contributions they put into their pension, and usually bought those back because there was a bit of money there. If they were getting married, maybe money was a bit tight, so it gave them a little bit of money to start them off in their new married life. What that actually meant until recently was that they couldn't even identify themselves as a retired police officer. They couldn't join the Retired Police Officers Association because they weren't in receipt of a pension, which is one of the criteria of joining the Retired Police Officers Association, is you must be in receipt of a police pension. But because these officers had bought the pension back, they couldn't join the Retired Police Officers. So it was one of our branch members who, I think it was only about 3 or 4 years ago, looked into this and appealed it, and now we've managed to get the constitution changed that these officers can now join Retired Police Officers Association as associate members, not full members, but associate members, but at least they can be part of, you know, the association and engage in the events that we have, which is quite an achievement again to have that done. It was a terrible thing that happened, that they couldn't continue on in the service as many wanted to do, but unfortunately that was just the way things were back then. And from 1967 that changed, and the regulations were changed to allow women to remain in the police service. Now, one of the things that we wanted to do very early in the establishment of the Lanarkshire Police Historical Society was to find out where the Lanarkshire Constabulary colours were. The Lanarkshire Constabulary colours are very much like, if you think about the trooping of the colour that happens every year when the Queen, now King Charles, would attend, and all the Guards regiments would parade in front of her, and they would display the colours, their battle colours, their battle honours. And that's what the Lanarkshire Constabulary colours are. They were presented to the force in 1957 at a ceremony in Lanark, and these are official ones authorised by the Lord Lion, and that's the only way you can have them officially, is if the Lord Lion approves the coat of arms. The local council decided they wanted to present the force with their own colours in 1957 on the centenary of the establishment of the force. And it was the first police force in the United Kingdom to have their own colours, and these were presented to them in Lanark at the time, at a ceremony in the church in Lanark on the 13th of October 1957, on the exact date, exact centenary of the force being established. There was a big parade through the town. Many of the police officers, I think there was about 200 or 300, marched through the town, went to the ceremony in the church. The streets were lined with members of the public to watch this, and then the colours were paraded back through the town once it had been presented at the church service. But these disappeared into a cupboard over time and within Strathclyde Police, and they were in their museum, but the museum closed down and then they were all boxed away. So we approached the force, and it was agreed that they would be donated to our society for us to now use at displays and to let people see the colours themselves. They were presented to us at our annual ceremony of remembrance at Hamilton Sheriff Court, but there's a war memorial for the fallen Lanarkshire police officers during both wars, and it was presented to us then, and we now have them on display every year at that ceremony. So we now have them safely in our own custody, and that's the officers parading through the town in Lanark in 1957, and then the most recent time they were officially displayed by the police was in the mid-1990s, when again on Lanimer's Day, which is a local celebration within Lanark, they were paraded through the town on that occasion by the senior police officers and other officers of the division. So quite an impressive set of colours, quite important to the society and quite important for our history to have possession of those and have them in safekeeping. So that brings us on to what Claire mentioned earlier on about a campaign that we have in relation to posthumous bravery awards. We had two police officers in Lanarkshire who were murdered on duty a number of years ago, one in 1976 and the other in 1983. We are campaigning for the recognition of both officers who were murdered. Neither received any form of recognition in relation to the ultimate sacrifice of giving their life, not even a Chief Constable's commendation, nothing, not a piece of paper, not even a visit into police headquarters for the family or the wives, whatever, nothing. They didn't receive a thing. And a number of years ago, about 4 years ago, I was looking into these, and for some reason I thought that the officers had received some form of award, but the deeper I dug, I found out that that was not the case. So I approached both families and spoke to them, and found out that they had been making inquiries over the years to find out whether or not their family members would be awarded anything. But basically, we're hitting brick walls everywhere they turned, and nobody was really taking it on board. So we decided, along with the families and along with their support and assistance, that we would take this on and try and raise the issue at the appropriate levels to try and get some form of recognition for them. So that's currently ongoing just now, but we've developed quite a bit over the last year or so in relation to the campaign. The strange thing in the UK is that the Government Awards Committee that sit within the Cabinet Office of the UK Government will not review any cases such as this for civilian bravery, if they happened over 5 years ago. Now, it seems to me crazy. We have an award system where people get OBEs, CBEs, knighthoods, whatever, for their lifetime of work or their lifetime in the music industry, where they make millions of pounds, but they get knighted, they get whatever honour it may be. However, if you give your life in the service of the community and the country, you get nothing, you don't get any recognition, and especially if it's more than 5 years old, they'll not even look at it. So we've written to the Cabinet Office, the Awards Committee, several times, and they keep coming back with this answer that because it's over 5 years old. Now, what we've tried to explain to them is that, yeah, it may be over 5 years old, but they're still within living memory. There's been plenty of publicity about both cases. They're really, both are high profile within the country. People know about them. They are talked about continually. So it's not as if, and again, a lot of people who are involved in them are still alive. So we have that, the living history there in relation to what took place, but they will not budge on it. It's been a bit of an experience going through that. And it's, to me, it's just crazy, but they've dug their heels in and said that what happened over 5 years ago, we won't look at it, which again, I don't think is right. But let's look at the cases just briefly. I'll not get into too much detail because they are quite extensive, obviously, in the nature of them. But George Taylor, he was killed on the 30th of November 1976, and as I mentioned earlier on, in 1975, regionalisation came and Strathclyde Police were formed, and this was the first police officer killed on duty since the formation of Strathclyde Police in 1975. At that time, George was only 27 years of age, 4 young children, the youngest being only 8 months old. So that young girl has never really known her father because of the circumstances that took place. But he worked in a remote area of Lanarkshire. He worked in an area called Carstairs, very remote, but it also houses the state hospital, where all the most violent and uncontrollable criminals in the country are sent, where they basically can't be managed within the normal prison system. Then they are sent to Carstairs. So Carstairs, still there, is full of people that cannot be managed in normal society. Basically, they are deemed to be beyond any assistance in that manner, any psychiatric help, and they're housed in there to be treated accordingly, as in a hospital, but the hospital is managed by the Scottish Prison Service. He was in routine patrol with another officer. What happened is another officer who worked remotely had an inquiry. So as happened generally there, they would join up together, go out and do the inquiry, and then go about their separate ways again. So the other officer had picked up George at his office, and they were driving to conduct these inquiries when they noticed a car stopped in this quiet country road. Now, 30th of November in Scotland, it's dark, it's wet, it's basically horrible. This area had no lighting in it, so it was dark, you couldn't see a thing. All they could see on the road was a car that stopped. You could see the headlights, and then they saw 3 people, 2 of whom were dressed in what appeared to be prison officer's uniform, and another person standing beside them. So they stopped the police car, and George got out while his colleague parked the vehicle off the road, and George approached him to find out what happened. On approaching him, he was attacked. He was basically hacked to death. This pair, Robert Moan and Thomas McCulloch, who are particularly horrible individuals, had been allowed to work within a woodwork and metalwork department within the state hospital, where they actually made various weapons, including axes, knives, and various other things from some of the materials that were allowed to get possession of, and they secreted them in various parts of the prison that they had access to. And they had stored these up with the intention at some point they were going to try and break out. And they planned it over a period of months, and they decided on that evening, now was the time. So prior to actually leaving, which these officers didn't know at the time because the alarm hadn't been raised, they'd actually killed one of the prison staff within the hospital and another inmate. So unknown to George Taylor, this hadn't been alerted as yet. George approached him, and all of a sudden he's attacked in the middle of nowhere by these people with these axes and knives, and basically hacked to death. His colleague tried to assist him, but he was beaten back. They tried to stab him as well. In fact, he had some injuries, but he managed to escape and raise the alarm. Something had gone wrong. The state hospital hadn't raised an alarm. What they should have done is, if they'd known there was a breakout, then they would set off a siren which alerted everyone in the area, alerted the local police, etc., to something going on. But that hadn't happened. Totally unaware that this pair had even escaped the hospital. It was about half an hour before they became aware that this pair were gone. But by that time, with the staff member killed, the inmate killed, George Taylor murdered, and they stole the police vehicle. They stole the police vehicle from Constable Taylor and his colleague and made off. They crashed that nearby, and two other passing motorists stopped to help them because they saw the police vehicle and thought, there's obviously an issue here, we'll get out and give a hand. As they'd done that, they were attacked by Mona McCulloch with these weapons it had made, and they were stabbed and hacked about the body and left at the side of the road basically to die. Fortunately, they didn't. Other people stopped, contacted ambulances and the police, and they were saved. They then made off in their vehicle. So the police van had been crashed, so they stole this other vehicle. They crashed that as well and made off from that in, again, a remote area. They saw a farmhouse, made their way to the farmhouse, and then held a family at knife point within their house. And then from there, they stole their car as well. But this time, things had now, the alarm had been raised, it had been realised what had happened. They then stole that family car, left the family where they were, thankfully, and stole the car, which then ended up in a high-speed chase down through Strathclyde police area, into Dumfries and Galloway police area, and then over the border into England to Cumbria police area. And there were a number of police vehicles on their tail because they were seen quite early on as they entered the dual carriageway heading south. Local police vehicles saw them and got on their tail and then summoned assistance. So this big chase gone on for a period of 70 miles down into England. And they crashed the car as they came off the motorway. The police forced them off on a slip road, stopped at a roundabout, crashed their car at a roundabout, and then got out and again tried to hijack another car. Even while the police were pursuing them, they tried to steal this other car at knife point until the police managed to get them, overpower them, and arrest them. And in the space of 3 hours, they'd murdered the 3 people, attempted to murder the other 2, held this family at knife point and stolen 3 vehicles, and were involved in this 70-mile police chase. So quite, as you can imagine, quite a dramatic experience. When they were arrested, they were brought back before the court, and they pled guilty. They didn't go to trial. They pled guilty to what had taken place and various other charges, including the murders. And they received mandatory life sentences. But unfortunately, McCulloch, they deemed to be safe, and he was allowed parole, and he now is out amongst us in the community, whereas Robert Moan, he remains incarcerated in high security prison, but McCulloch's out and about. So that's the circumstances of George Taylor's case, and as we say, he's received no honour or award at all, and that's of any value to any extent whatsoever. In my own opinion, when you see those circumstances, and this is only putting it briefly, as there's a lot more to it, but that's briefly what took place. It's absolutely horrendous, horrific what took place, and not to be recognised by way of a posthumous honour, I think, is outrageous. And we've actually got someone with us that's listening in here who's quite important to this campaign as well, Rena Lauder-Knight. Rena's dad was Chief Superintendent in Strathclyde Police, and he actually was in charge of the area where George Taylor and indeed Ross Hunt, who we'll talk about shortly, worked. Unfortunately, Rena's dad died just a couple of years ago, I think about a year and a half ago, Rena. He died, and Rena had to obviously to sort out his estate and the house and things, and Rena donated a number of items of police memorabilia and uniform to us, which we're really grateful for. But she also found a number of pieces of paper, and I went through these documents to see what they were, just in case they were sensitive in any way and had to be appropriately destroyed. To my great amazement and surprise, within this bundle of papers was a report from her dad to the Chief Constable of the time, nominating George for a posthumous bravery award and many others for various other awards as well. This went to the Chief Constable. Chief Constable wrote a report to the Scottish Secretary of the time, Bruce Milan, in Edinburgh. Again, the Chief Constable was looking for a posthumous bravery award for George Taylor, but that's where the trail stops. We don't know what happened thereafter. And the amazing thing is, no one knew about this report that had been submitted by Mr. Lauder and the Chief Constable. No one knew about it. The families didn't know about it. When I spoke to the Taylor family, they were amazed. They thought that the police had never applied for anything for George at all, but it transpires they did. So there is paperwork there showing that George was, actually put forward for this award, but we can't find out what happened when it arrived at the Scottish Secretary's office and where it went from there. And again, we went back to the Honours Committee, the Cabinet Office, and explained all this. We provided them with this paperwork, and yet they still refuse to review the case. And that is what we're fighting, is to try and get this reviewed, looked at, and George properly recognised for his bravery. So thanks very much to Rena and highlighting and providing us with all that material, even though she didn't know what was in it, nor did we until we went through it and found this amazing documentation, which has now made its way down into the Parliament and various other places for people to hopefully look at, and through time we will hopefully get the right result. Screen stuck again. Sorry, that's clear, but oh, that's us.
That's you now.
That's it, yep. The second case is Detective Sergeant William Ross Hunt, or known as Ross, he was commonly known. He was stabbed to death, again in the line of duty, 5th of June 1983, while attempting to detain a youth for attempted murder. So we'd already had an incident that had taken place in a public house in an area called Lark Hall in Lanarkshire. This youth had tried to stab someone else to death, quite a serious case. What had happened was Ross and his colleagues, they knew this person was involved, and they knew the family. They were quite a violent family, and they decided to go along to the house to try and detain this person. They went to the house, spoke to the family that were there, and they said the chap wasn't at home. This was about midnight on the 5th of June. So the officers were leaving, but as they were leaving the house and going out the path onto the roadway, they noticed some people walking towards them. One of the officers recognised one of the chaps as being the person they were looking for, and they decided just to hang about, see where they were going to go, and then deal with it. So this group walked into the pathway at the house, and at that point, Ross Hunt and his colleagues decided they would stop him, detain the person, and take him for interview. However, at this point, all hell kicked off, and these people started to resist arrest. This alerted the people in the house, who were the mother and father, brothers and sisters of this chap, to something was going on outside. So they all come out the house. So we ended up with somewhere in the region of 7 or 8 people out in the garden area and in the front street fighting with the police officers. It became quite heated, and the chap who had been involved in the initial attempt murder went into his house and brought out kitchen knives. And the fight started to get quite intense, and Ross, who was in charge of the group of police officers, decided, right, I think we're just going to have to retreat here and get assistance to come and give us a hand. So as they were retreating from the driveway, Ross fell, he tripped and fell over. At that point, the chap with the knives dived on top of him, basically pinned him on the ground and began to stab at his upper body with the knives. Meanwhile, other members of the family were grabbing large pieces of wood, sticks, various other implements, and hitting and kicking Ross about the head and body, ultimately killing him. Not there, he died at hospital shortly afterwards, but basically the damage was done at that point. Second officer was also stabbed, and he almost died. He had a collapsed lung and various other serious injuries, and the 2 other officers were seriously injured with quite significant injuries to their head and upper bodies, etc. Assistance was called via the radio, and a large amount of police officers arrived and managed to control the situation and arrest those responsible. Ross was 56 years of age. He had over 30 years service at the time, which was the period when you were likely to look at retiring. And in fact, he was going to be retiring in a month or so's time. He'd actually asked for an extension to his service because of his age at that time, because it was 55 that he should be retiring at, but he asked for an extension to take him right up to his 30-year service. And so he was about to retire in a month or so's time. And he also had a young family of 3 sons, and they were left, obviously bereft, with the loss of their father and husband. 3 family members from the Murrays, Hugh Murray, Margaret, and Hugh Murray Sr., they were arrested, and they were all convicted of the murder. Only one of them survives. I think it's Margaret Smith's the only one that's alive. Hugh Murray Jr., he was released after about 18 years and he then died of a drugs overdose. Hugh Murray was released after about 10 years and he died of natural causes. But again, similar to George Taylor, Ross Hunt received no formal recognition, no Chief Constable's award, anything at all in relation to his murder. And again, the families are left scratching their head and asking themselves why. So our campaign is looking at these posthumous bravery awards. That's what we're looking for both Constable Taylor and DS Hunt. We're looking for them being recognised posthumously for obviously their sacrifice, but we're also looking for a new award, a new emergency services award for those within the fire service, ambulance service, police service that are killed in the line of duty to receive an automatic award from the monarchy, basically. There is something similar in existence for the military. Anyone that's killed in a conflict zone serving with the military services will automatically receive what they call the Elizabeth Cross, which is given by the monarch to the families of the dead to recognise their service and their sacrifice for their country. So we're looking for that also for emergency services, but the main thrust of the campaign is the Posthumous Bravery Awards. Last year, 27th of April, we managed to get a member of the Scottish Parliament, Graham Simpson, on board, and he had a debate within the Scottish Parliament, which got cross-party support and received full support from the Cabinet Secretary for Justice, who wrote to the Westminster Parliament, obviously seeking a review of these cases. On the 30th of November, on the 46th anniversary to the day of George Taylor's murder, the Chief Constable, Sir Ian Livingston, presented the Taylor family with a Posthumous Bravery Award. Now, that's all he can do. That's the only extent he can go to. And it's a certificate, basically, from the Chief Constable recognising the sacrifice that Constable Taylor made. George Taylor's wife, Sally, was there along with her family. I was fortunate enough to be invited along as well, and it was quite an emotional time. The Chief Constable apologising for the failures over the years of the police, of failing to recognise Constable Taylor, and presented the certificate to Mrs. Taylor, and also sat with them for a while and had lunch and sat and spoke to each and every one of them. So he spent time there, did apologise, and done the best that he could in the circumstances by providing his posthumous award. Then this year, we also spoke to Wendy Chamberlain, an MP at the Westminster government. She is a former police officer in Scotland, and I approached her because obviously she would have a knowledge of the policing and what the significance of this campaign would be, and she agreed to take that on for us. So there was a televised debate at Westminster on the 10th of January this year, where she presented the facts of both cases and the travesty that neither had been recognised in any way. And the government minister that was there, Johnny Mercer, who's the Armed Forces Minister, agreed that there were issues regarding this and has now agreed to make it a government priority and has promised to go and review both cases to give us an answer later this year. So fingers crossed we get something positive coming from that aspect, but we'll not build our hopes up too much, and hopefully we will get something. And on the 5th of June this year, on the 40th anniversary of Ross Hunt's murder, the Chief Constable will be presenting his family. Unfortunately, Ross Hunt's wife has died in recent years, but the family, the sons and their extended family will come along to the police headquarters, and they will receive the similar award as George Taylor got. And that will be on the 40th anniversary of his murder. So again, quite significant. So we're making strides in relation to the campaign, but as I say, we can't just rest in the laurels that we've got this far and everything's looking rosy. As we all know, politicians can change their mind quite significantly. So until we actually see something in black and white or get some form of real indication that something's going to take place, then we will not rest in those laurels. We will keep going, and the campaign will continue. And we'll continue with full media coverage. We've been fortunate with having some friendly people within the media that are supporting us in the campaign, and they regularly bring things back into the public arena through their publications to try and raise awareness of both cases and try and get a solution to them. As Claire mentioned earlier on, I've written a book just towards the end of last year that got published, the Lanarkshire Police Chronicles, and it's a kind of twofold thing. It was launched on the 17th of November. It was written to highlight policing in Lanarkshire over the past 150 years, just looking at some of the individuals were mentioned there and some of the significant cases within Lanarkshire. It's not War and Peace, it's about short, sharp stories, short stories about each of these individuals and cases, just to highlight things that police have done over the 150 odd years of policing in Lanarkshire. Been fortunate to have a former Deputy Chief Constable write the foreword for it, Deputy Chief Constable Tom Wood. He's also written a book recently in relation to another well-known murder in Scotland. So it was good to get someone of that level to actually endorse the book as well. And it's short factual stories relating to police officers and cases within Lanarkshire. And I've dedicated the book to both George Taylor and Ross Hunt, because that was the whole purpose of it, is again to try and raise this awareness of the campaign to get recognition for them. And they both feature significantly in the book. The full stories of their tragic circumstances are highlighted in the book, and it is in graphic detail sometimes, unfortunately, but I think we have to do that to get emphasis on how horrific both murders were. Both murdered while trying to protect us from these evil, wrongdoing people, you know, and my belief is they should be properly recognised for it. So both cases are fully explained and described within the book. I've been fortunate enough to have the first two print runs sold out, and the third one's just been released, so we've got a new batch of books to come out. But that's only 17th of November it was launched, so to have the first two print runs sold out is brilliant. It means word's getting out there that we're getting out into the public arena about these two officers and their cases and trying to get the attention of the public. It's a local company that's published the book, Ringwood Publishing in Glasgow. I was fortunate to have them take on the project, and they've published it. And believe it or not, even though it's only been out a couple of months, it's the second in their bestseller list for 2022, and it's only been available it was only available in the last 2 months of that year. But it can be bought on Amazon, either in hard copy or Kindle. Other bookshops, Waterson's, Book Depository, Foyles, Bookhyphen, plenty of other places online. Well, now they've got the third print run out, you can get it, because nobody could get it, unfortunately, believe it or not, over Christmas, which was a bit disappointing. But it's out there now, and hopefully we'll get the third batch sold out as well. Fingers crossed, anyway. And it can also be published via Ringwood Publishing website. If you go online and just put in Ringwood Publishing, it can be purchased through their website as well. Here we go again. Oh, that's us. So that's us at the end of the presentation. So hopefully giving you a bit of insight to what we're trying to do in relation to the Lanarkshire Police Historical Society, and to obviously get these two cases properly recognised for the bravery that they've shown, and obviously for their service to the community. And that's the whole purpose of it. So thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you, George. That was amazing.
Sorry,
we had a bit of a slight delay every now and then. We could still hear everything that you were saying. It just felt as if you were having a bit of a pause. But we got there. I
don't know what it was. Every time I seem to, if I dwelled on something for too long, it just stuck.
I think there was maybe a slight freeze going on, but that's why we tell people to turn the sound off and the cameras off, because sometimes you do get a bit of that, especially this time of night.
Yep.
That was brilliant. I mean, how shocking are those cases?
Oh, it's horrendous. I mean, when you read the full details of them, I'm not saying one's worse than the other. I mean, they're obviously both horrific. But if you look at the George Taylor case, and if you know the area where this actually happened, it's in the middle of nowhere. You've got the village, and you've got this horrific institution where they've escaped next to it, and it's all country roads. It's dark. November night, it was wet, it was raining. To encounter that, you're just going about your normal duties. You're not expecting, something like that to happen. So what went through their minds as this all started to kick off, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what it would be like or how you would react in that circumstances. But the member of the public that had stopped in that car that they first saw, he obviously witnessed the full thing, and he said it was just horrendous. And he actually in his statement commends the bravery of George Taylor. How he tackled these two, and he fought, obviously for his life, and for people, and the civil servants, I must say, it's not politicians that are the issue here. It's civil servants who, for some odd reason, just keep coming up with this 5-year rule and just will not budge.
You know what, George? For me, that's more as horrific, if not more horrific, than the death itself.
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean, that experience.
Just that they would just, ignore that and keep coming up with, well, it's 5 years ago. Well, who cares?
Yeah, it's horrendous. I mean, it shouldn't matter. There shouldn't be a time scale in this.
No, there shouldn't.
What someone fed back to me on the kind of quiet was, well, they're frightened the floodgates are going to open.
Well, so what?
Yeah, but there isn't any floodgates. I think we've worked out in total people that would probably qualify for this. You're talking maybe about 50 people. Now, many honours get given out every or twice a year, the monarch's birthday and at New Year. Hundreds, thousands.
Hundreds, yeah.
50 is nothing. And plus, if you've given your life in the service of your community, then I think it should be a no-brainer. It should be an automatic. Yep.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's like you're saying about the Elizabeth Cross. I just came across, I was doing a bit of research on my husband's side and came across a guy who, his great uncle, died while he was serving out in Cyprus in the RAF. And that was in 1959, and they were calling for relatives.
He can qualify for that.
So you think, well, they're doing that for other members of other forces, why is it not?
Well, they've just done it again recently for the nuclear testing.
Right.
Personnel that were involved in nuclear testing, they've now given them a similar type of award. They've created an award for them. So it's there. I mean, it can be done. Why there seems to be this sticking point for the emergency services, I don't know. And what we've also tried to put across is, yeah, we've got military services, people go out to conflicts, but these don't happen that often. A police officer goes out every single day, doesn't know what's going to happen. You don't know what corner you turn, what you're going to face, what call you attend, what that's going to be like, whether someone's going to be deranged and armed or whatever. That's an every day, every hour.
They're going, as you say, they're going to the front every single shift.
Every single day.
Yeah.
And
it's going into the front and not knowing what to expect.
Not knowing, no.
If you're on the battlefield,
not knowing who your enemy is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Different scenario altogether.
So we had a young police officer killed here just after Christmas, I think. So we had horrific snow over Christmas. We had 30 centimeters, and like it was over 3 or 4 days. So it was, we had 5-6 feet of snow. And of course, people completely forget how to drive in the first snowfall of the year. So for 2 weeks straight, every call that the police were getting was some car in the ditch, some car in the ditch, some car in the ditch. And it was just not far from where I live, actually. And there was a truck in the ditch. And somebody called it. And this new officer, it was his first shift out unsupervised. He goes to say, to help these people, potentially help these people in the ditch get out and just say, it's all right, we've got help coming, and was shot in the face and killed. I mean, it's just, it's just going out. Like you say, you don't know who your enemy is, right?
No.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's horrific. Absolutely horrific.
So I mean, what is the answer? Is the answer to, start up campaigns and spread the word and,
Yeah. I say probably
say take it to the papers, but it looks like that's been done, eh?
Yeah,
it's been done. Probably we want to go a bit further with that as well. We need to take it a bit more. That's why I'm saying it's okay what happened in January, getting it debated in Westminster, but they can change their mind about all these sort of things, and you don't want to kind of just take it, well, it's going to happen. We don't know, and I think we just need to keep the momentum going and go probably more national. In relation to a lot of the press coverage has been in Scotland, but we really need to press it out because there are other cases. There are other people in England and Wales campaigning, so we're working with them, with the police federations down there and the police organisations to get them highlighted as well. So if we can get that weight, behind the campaign from all these various other areas as well, then it just becomes a no-brainer, as you say, Christine. For and it's not the politicians; it's the civil servants of the issue.
And I think, you can't really underestimate the power of social media. So, if there's anything that,
100%.
myself, society can help with spreading the word, you just need to say it. I ran one on social media trying to find, it was to get a guy whose remains were sitting in a box, basically, from World War II. And I ran this post on social media, and it got to, I think it was about 200,000 shares.
Yeah.
You know, and eventually, you know, got more information, and the guy got a military funeral, and you know, we managed to. I mean, it just shows you social media has so much more bang now than what it ever did.
Yep. No,
I think
definitely.
a lot of people take notice. So we've got a couple of questions. So Maureen has said, enjoying your presentation very much, George. She has a badge, not a hand, of Lanarkshire Constabulary, can't even talk, Lanarkshire Constabulary Tug of War Team 1901, she thinks.
Yeah, a small medal. Small medal.
Yes, it's got the name on it, either John or Robert McCall, who was her great or great great uncle, and he came from either Glassford, Stonehouse, Blackhall area. She notices a photo of police medal on the police medals website, circa 1900, and believes the recipient of this badge may be in that photo. Do you know if these photos have any recorded names?
I think I've got one that's got names on it. The rest don't, unfortunately. I can have a look at that. If she maybe an idea just to leave my email or whatever as well.
I'll put the website details actually in the chat.
Yep.
So can they contact you via that?
Yeah, there's a what do you call it? What is it you call it? A contact form on there. So if she puts that on, maybe a photograph of she'll get my email from there, and we'll get a photograph of it. I know what she means, and we've got 2 or 3 photographs of tug of war teams, so hopefully might be able to identify something there.
There you go, another clue for the research, Maureen.
Yep.
Kathy says, so interesting, thanks for the details and attempting to honour these men. Her great-grandfather was a detective sergeant in Glasgow from 1880 to 1920. How are you getting the details for early crimes that they might have been a part of? I would take it probably maybe newspapers.
British Newspaper Archive. British Newspaper Archive is the best. Yeah. Crawl through them, just go through them. Again, you'll know yourself by doing searches. You've got to do all sorts of searches, and about spellings and names and all various other things. But that's where I got a lot of the kind of material for the initial stories, and then start looking at the individuals and expanding out from there to try and build the story around them as well, personalise it into the individuals. Not just telling a story, but trying to tell a story about who these people were as well, you know, because I think that's as important as the crimes, as who's investigated them and who were these people and what's their backgrounds.
Well, that's it, because you notice with the news, I mean, in the newspaper archive, you might have a relative called James Smith, but they might not always refer to him as James Smith. It might be Mr. Smith from whatever street. So you sometimes need to kind of think outside the box in the way that you search. Yeah,
as you know yourself, you've just got to be, how would you say, a bit of a detective yourself and start, you know, thinking about what if, and then kind of expanding things and just doing different researches. And it's amazing what comes up sometimes. Get some really, really good stuff from the news. And I think what's really good is the way that they reported things back then, you know, in the kind of earlier part of last century. They were really extensive in the reporting. The court reporting is fantastic. And if you get 2 or 3 publications covering the same story, they all try to do something different, maybe cover a different witness. So you actually build up a bigger story from 2 or 3 publications, and you get a really good picture of what's taking place.
I think one of the things that amazes me with kind of certainly local crime to where we are just now is certain crimes would be publicised away down the south of England.
Yeah,
you know,
they appear everywhere.
I mean, nowadays it's maybe on the Scottish news, you don't get it on the British news or the UK news, but you know, nowadays it's I mean, it was like, you know, this be newspaper down in Brighton reporting something that happened in Airdrie, you know.
I know, it's incredible, and that's why you've just got to watch for your search. Don't narrow it down. I mean, okay, sometimes you've got to narrow it down a wee bit because of names or whatever, it just becomes, you know, too extensive.
Yeah.
But you've got to do that. You've just got to look. You just don't know where that information is going to turn up.
Yeah. Rena said, great presentation, George, and thank you for mentioning my dad. I think your dad's worth mentioning, definitely. I think both of us would agree that, George.
Well, without a doubt, absolutely phenomenal. If it hadn't been for Rena's dad, you know, we wouldn't have been in this position of, you know, it's given it a lot more weight, that we can actually show that there was paperwork there. And the incredible thing about it is, say Mr. Loader had actually recommended George and various others for awards, including the 3 officers in Cumbria who made the arrests at the very end. And the crazy thing is, the 3 officers that made the arrests all got the Queen's Gallantry Medal.
Ugh. And the ones that gave their lives,
The ones that gave their life haven't got anything. And this is where I'm left scratching my head. I just can't get my head. I mean, don't get me wrong, they deserved it because the manner of the arrest.
So did the ones that
this
died.
pair were still fighting for their life. Yeah. They deserve it, but so does George Taylor and some of the others involved. There's 2 men that stopped in the van who were brutally attacked and left at the side of the road for dead. They should have got something as well. Yeah. Because they've tried to, you know, they went what they thought was to someone's assistance, and then they've turned on them as well. So horrendous, absolutely horrible, horrible individuals.
I know. So you're working on a second book?
Yes, I've got a number of bits and pieces for the second one as well. So we'll see what happens later on this year.
Yeah. So if I've got, well, I know there's certainly maybe one wee story I can put your way. Just send it down. You can have a look at it and see if it's worthy of your book.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah,
Always.
So if anyone's got anything exciting that they've found in their family tree that, you know, they think George can look at and write in his next book, then send it on.
Yeah. Well, if anybody that's here or any of your other members further afield, whatever, have anything that think is linked into any of the Lanarkshire police forces, please get in touch, because we're always looking to identify people that have served. I mean, last week, how did I speak to this chap? I'm doing a talk at Rutherglen Library on the 23rd, and a chap had emailed the organiser to say, sorry, I can't make it, but my dad was a police sergeant in Lanarkshire, blah, 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 from 1926 to 1953. And he just left it at that. So I contacted the organiser and said, would he mind if I contacted him just to find out a bit more? So I got his email, said, just give me a wee bit of background about your dad. And if you've got anything else, next thing I ended up with about 30 photographs of his dad through his police service from 1926 right through to he retired in 1955.
Wow.
And all that stuff is sitting there. It's just tapping into people. And the great thing about photographs is people don't need to give them up now. You know, you can scan them on and all that, and you get great detail off them. The old photographs are brilliant for detail.
Yeah.
And so I've got all those without actually physically seeing the person or actually having to get the photographs physically to scan them. He's done all that for me. And I've got this massive piece on this individual that's just brilliant, just through one email. But another thing, I don't know if any of you go on eBay looking for bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for things on eBay as well to see what's there. So I looked on the other night and I saw a really good photograph. It's not from Lanarkshire, it's Ayrshire. There's 2 Ayrshire Constabulary police officers sitting full uniform at a little table outside the tent. And it transpires it was a recruiting details, really nice. And it's all written in the back because one of the cops had obviously got the photograph taken, then made it into a postcard and sent it to a friend. So you got all the wee story about what they'd done. Then I looked at the price, £99.99. They're looking for this postcard. So I emailed the chap and said, I thought maybe he meant £9.99, which I could go with that. So he said, oh, no, it's not. Sorry, I've made a mistake with the price. I'll give you a 25% discount. You can have it for £74.99. I said, don't think so.
I'll give you a 75% discount. I still wouldn't take it.
I mean, I buy a lot of photographs, and they're usually round about the kind of, not any more than £5.
No.
You know, £3-4, you know, depending on what it is and the condition.
You don't mind paying a wee bit more if it's something unusual, you know, something a wee bit, well, it's a one-off type thing, then I totally get that. And then I looked on the rest of his page and everything was the same. Every single photograph he had was on for something over £80. And you say, there's no way you're going to sell any of those.
I'll just sit there. Everybody else will sell theirs and he'll just sit there.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But the other thing he hasn't done, he's not protected them. He's not put any watermarks over them, so you can sit and cut and paste it off eBay if you want to do it, so get it for nothing.
The staff to pick up on that, because I had previously done that for my Airdrie One Place study, and I was like kind of copying all the just taking a screen capture basically of all the postcards, and then they started now putting things over the top of them. So
yeah, that's a bit of paper
but,
clip
I mean,
or something.
I mean, I've got a few, and I mean, one of the things that I'd been looking for was a photographer that was from Airdrie, and I've started searching for his photographs that were mounted onto postcards, most of them.
Right.
So, I mean, you can get quite. I mean, the searches that you can set up on eBay for things are fab.
That's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yep. And I take it, any contributions. So if anybody's got any police memorabilia that they're looking to.
Yeah, if they're not looking to keep it, if they want to offload it and they want to get it. Well, the thing is, we're getting back into the displays and the open days. We're getting all this stuff back out there, into let the public see it, and some of the stuff that's not so delicate they can handle. We've got whistles, we've got handcuffs, we've got batons and all that people can, they can handle. The kids love all that sort of stuff. So anything at all. But I say, even if it's photographs or whatever, if we can get copies of them, that's just as good. They're quite happy with those. And just getting some details about people, that have served in the police, then please tell us about them. And same with Kathy. I don't just stick my research to Lanarkshire. I look all over the place. I've got a lot of Glasgow officers saying if she wants to give me some more details, I can have a wee look and see if I can find anything else out, because all the police records are in the Mitchell Library in Glasgow for the city of Glasgow. So I'll be able to get his police record.
There you go, Kathy. And actually, I must mention that George recently gave me one for my grandfather's cousin who was an inspector in Lanarkshire.
Yep.
So I was able to give George his death certificate and various bits and bobs, and he gave me the service record back, so it builds a bigger picture for both of us, which is great. So,
that's brilliant. It's great. And that's what it's all about. It's about helping each other, and great stuff.
Mm-hmm. So Maureen says, thank you very much. She'll contact you when she digs out the badge, and she'll send you some stuff and things to go through it as well.
Yep, no problem at all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Do you want me to type my email address up here just quickly?
Put your email address in the chat box, Yep. Just a quick reminder, next month's our next webinar. Wait a minute, I've got two screens here and I'm confused with everything that I'm trying to do. The next webinar will be on Thursday, the 9th of March at 7 p.m. and the speaker will be So Christine's going to share a presentation on the Scots in North America. You can register now, and let me just post the link. There's the link in the chat box. If you want to click on that, you can register for Christine's webinar next month as well. Let me just get the next bit I need to paste in.
Christine, I can send you a few police related things from here, officers that have went here and served in the police over in Canada.
Fabulous.
In fact, one was murdered on duty over in Canada as well. And
yeah, fabulous.
Okay, I'll send you some details.
I'll tell you my police story. I'll tell you that when I email.
Yeah. Okay, no problem.
Is this the one I've heard?
My uncle with the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've lost me now because I'm thinking about that.
You were putting the information up for the next talk.
Yeah. I've put the details in so everyone can register. There was something else I was going to say. Yeah, I need to speak to you at some point, George, because obviously you had mentioned that there was a lot of guys who were in the police who obviously served in the RAF, which is why we have Rena as a mutual friend, and both were friendly with her dad, because he was a big inspiration in a lot of what I do as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's probably watching over us today with a smile on his face.
Yeah, he's touched a lot of lives, I must say. He's certainly done that.
Definitely. So yeah, I'll need to speak to you about the RAF boys, and we can maybe share some info on that as well.
Yep, no problem.
If you're not a member of Lanarkshire Family History Society, then why don't you join us now? The annual membership ranges from £10 for the e-membership. You receive 3 journals per year, monthly e-news, and use of the Society's Research Centre in Motherwell. And you can find out more via the link in the chat box, which takes you to the website. And that's pretty much all. I'd like to thank you again, George, for your amazing presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
My mum actually just finished reading your book yesterday.
All right, good.
And her comment was, if he was sitting beside me, I'd give him a big cuddle because I just loved the book. She said, and she said to me, she said to me to tell you that.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, she just loved it, and so she was delighted when I said that you were working on a second one.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much.
I think that's the thing. True crime is a big seller. You know, there's so
It
many
is, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
into
Oh,
true crime. Yeah. So, yep, great.
good. Thank you.
So thank you again so much, and we look forward to seeing everybody next month as well.
Bye.